sound of white noise again.
Free socks.
Let's go! Go, Jets, go! Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Holy hell, welcome back to the landing strip, a top-line produced project brought to you by From Financial. And I think I need to go out for a smoke before talking about this one. That was quite the adventure for your Winnipeg Jets in this one. Whew. Mikey, how are you feeling after that hockey game?
You know, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and sometimes it's even better to have Connor Hellebuyck on your team. Holy crap, that was a game and a half. We're gonna get into all the nuances, but man, I thank the heavens every day for the sun in the sky and Connor Hellebuyck on the ice.
Yes, as Turd Ferguson says over on YouTube early on here, all praise Connor Hellebuyck, our Lord and Savior.
Correct.
And to that, tonight's Sack Squirtle is in honor of the Hella God. Connor Hellebuyck, let's get the vibes going. I see Lucas and Pix already calling for it. Let's get things going. Boy, is it nice to have an elite goaltender, man. Jesus, whew. That did not look pretty through at least the first half in this one. And then the Winnipeg Jets settle in late in the second. Connor Hellebuyck, 38 saves through 40 minutes, and a lot of them were quality looks.
Yep. 22 saves in that first.
But hey, that's what a big brother does to a little brother sometimes, you know. You got to give them a little bit of leeway early on, and then you shut the door on them in the third. That third period, after what we watched for the first 40, 45 minutes, absolutely incredible adjustment for the Winnipeg Jets down the stretch to bring this game to a close. That's exciting about this. We're going to dive into, there's a lot to go through
so many
on a
layers.
game like today. Choices TK points out, Nick can show his face on Twitter now, and I'm already getting in the Minnesota Wild's mentions. Don't you worry about that. But holy hell, this was a game they didn't necessarily deserve through the first half of this one.
Yep.
Might have been one of the worst starts for them of the season. But they have the big man back there. That's the type of game where you just hand out the Vezina tonight.
Yeah.
Just hand out the Vezina tonight.
Never mind the Vezina. I was trying to find where the Hart Trophy was hiding because he's getting his name at least some votes there because holy Christ.
Yeah, the Minnesota Wild have to be frustrated after that one, as early on in this one, they did everything possible to take it to the Winnipeg Jets. That Wild team looked fast, aggressive, and let's go to my big takeaway here. We've been talking about wondering if this is a trend. It's safe to say this is a pre-scout at this point, I believe.
Yep.
The book is out on how to beat the Jets system defensively, as we saw another quality opponent really generating their offense from point shots and shots from the outside and sending guys to that slot to just get all over rebounds. That was the big struggle early on in this one. We know it's become a bit of a thing for the Winnipeg Jets and their opposition. And for them to just shut that all down in the third period and not allow anything, the first Minnesota chance came at just past the 10-minute mark against the top line and Pionk there for an extra long shift.
Yep.
But, whew.
Yeah, it was
where are your thoughts going to start here?
It felt like we were watching two different games. And I don't know what switch they were able to flip to make that change because, yeah, the team we saw in the first half was getting absolutely decimated. The Wild were doing whatever they wanted with the Jets in that early going, hemming the first line in. And if it wasn't for Connor Hellebuyck, it probably should have been 4-1, coming out of the first period. The fact that they held on and made the adjustments that they did to come back and, hold the Wild off for half of a period before getting a chance, it was night and day. I couldn't really believe what we were watching. And big shout out to Alex Iafallo and that fourth line for the good shifts and the goals. We'll get into all of it, but man, that was another game where you needed every player on the ice contributing, and the top line had a rough night, but the other three lines were there.
I wasn't as big on the Nemestikov line, though. I do feel like everyone kind of settled in for that third to a level we're pretty happy with. But in this one, I mean, the one thing I'll give the Winnipeg Jets credit for this year, and it seems to be a thing, is we've kind of talked about how competitive they keep one-goal games, and this was probably not an example of it, at least early in this one. But as soon as they score that goal to bring it to 1-1, Nino Niederreiter gets his, ninth of the season against another former Nino Niederreiter team. And it felt like that goal was the tipping point that started to bring some of that pushback out, to see the Jets kind of take control of this game for the rest of the way. And I do think that's been something that's been pretty common in their game. In close games, they have been fairly competitive. And when they score, they seem to be a team that is able to grasp momentum for a stretch. And then you give this team a lead, good luck, because between the goalie and the pipes and what we saw with this team absolutely shut things down. The neutral zone in the third period looked great. I know our good friend over on YouTube, Toronto Sports Network, it's something we talk about often. I felt they were really backing up early, and they were giving the Wild a ton of space. That was a third period where they weren't. You were seeing guys like Neil Pionk jump up into the neutral zone to pick off plays and send it the other way. All three D pairings, I thought, settled in really nicely after an early onslaught, which you like to see from especially two pairs that were playing their first games together. Hey,
let's talk about the pairs. How do you? What did you think of the ones that they chose, and then their performance?
So I do like how they went about it. Like we kind of talked about last game, I wasn't sure if they were going to go Heinola Pionk or Heinola Miller.
Yep. We
know coming into the year, they wanted to see Heinola with Miller on that third pair right from camp. I was definitely concerned about the Fleury Pionk pair, and we'll see where that kind of goes over time. Liked all three in this game. I thought it was a tough start for the DeMello-Morrissey pair, mostly because, Dylan DeMello is still going through it. I mean, he got his jock might be up in XL Energy Center right now after that Hartman maneuver, but I thought even he settled in as this game went on.
Yep.
To a better level than what we've seen. Love the Heinola Miller pairing. I'm really excited about what I saw tonight. I know it's Ville Heinola's first game. There was still a little bit of rust and nervousness early on in that game. And I thought that pair was excellent, to be honest. I'm having trouble thinking of a quality look that group gave up in this game. And I think that's a pair where, given we expect Ville to progress into this, I mean, today was his third pro game. And it's safe to say, if the chat's any indication, if Kevin Sawyer is any indication, that a lot of people liked what they saw from Ville today, and that's exciting.
Yep.
We saw some of his skill set. Obviously, on the first goal, he makes the zone exit pass up. We saw him getting involved a little bit offensively. There was one play in the second where he moves it over to Miller, and then he drives to the slot as a high tip, which is the kind of thing, the dynamic aspect of Ville Heinola he's going to add to some of the offensive creation. I thought he handled the physicality aspect of this game well. I know that was a big concern for some people coming in.
Yep.
And then he obviously draws the power play that puts this one to bed. A little bit of a softie potentially. I get why Foligno was mad on that one. But I thought there was a lot more good than bad to Ville Heinola's game tonight, and that's exciting to me. I saw one game, and I've been riding for him for a while, but I have no doubt who the sixth D-man on this team is based on what I've seen this year so far after one game. And I thought that the Pionk-Fleury pair was solid. Didn't cost the Winnipeg Jets. We still saw Pionk being active as far as getting up the ice.
Yep.
We saw them work off of each other to create some seams a little bit as they were breaking up. As far as the 3D pairs go, and a night that I think a lot of people were concerned, I think you got to be happy with how that game turned out.
Yeah, I was definitely nervous coming into the game tonight to see where the pairings were going to go. I thought maybe they were going to go path of least resistance and just drop Heinola into that second pairing. I kind of like that they didn't after now that what we saw, that Heinola-Miller pairing was not noticeable in any negative way. And the few times you did notice him out there, it was a positive. It was either good positioning on Heinola being able to Heinola being able to draw that penalty. And I loved the communication between Miller and Heinola that you saw all night on the ice and on the bench. They were talking the entire way through. So yeah, that may grow into a really nice, 2B pairing almost, you know what I mean?
I'm excited to see what that pairing looks like the more time they get together, because the one thing that I was talking about early on this year, until obviously you got hurt, was the idea that, for one, they're going to be able to move the puck a lot better, and we did see Ville Heinola a lot more comfortable with the puck. Another aspect of his game I really like, and we were talking about the idea that they were backing in early. He seems to have a good grasp of when he does gap up too far, and he's a pretty smooth skater at adjusting it on the fly, just like a little detail in his game. But yeah, what I'm excited to see as it kind of grows and we see where this develops into is, I think Ville Heinola, with a guy that can shoot like Colin Miller, is going to open up some pretty exciting offensive elements for the Winnipeg Jets coming from their quote-unquote third pair. Hey, game one, good to see. Let's follow it up. But I'm very happy for Ville tonight, man. Obviously, he's gone through a lot, but you got to be happy with what you saw from him there.
Yeah, no hockey or no NHL hockey rather for 23 months, right? They mentioned on the broadcast that's a long time in between NHL games. And to step in and not have any like noticeable gaffes, nothing really egregious, and to show those little flashes of what's to come, I think is great. And just to touch on what you said there, the opportunity to have Heinola and Miller go out against lesser competition as the quote unquote third pair, and to have that massive like 90-mile-an-hour bomb from Miller coming from nowhere because Heinola is able to get him the puck in weird spots, like this is going to be fun, I think.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I was nervous. I was nervous for Ville in this one. I think a lot of people were, just for the situation, and tip of the cap to him handling it well. Like I said, I thought he looked nervous in this one early, and who wouldn't be? But settled in really nicely. We saw the aspects of his game that we expect him to further grow into. Got to be happy with it. But let's turn it over to the phone lines, as we already had an anxious caller waiting to get involved. I'll start diving into the chat here, and I see Choices TK over on Twitch says 37, keeping the Jets in that one until they could find their game. Very opportunistic win, and since the Avs Stars and of course the Wild lost, picked up 2 on all the contenders now. Currently 6, 10, and 12 up on the 3 teams in the division. It's a huge night when you're looking at the point separation and what the Winnipeg Jets continue to do. That's a great point there.
Yep.
D-Labs calls it a Heli masterclass, and it's very hard to say anything different than that. Zooch40 says, wow, really looked like we were in for another loss like Nashville game where the other team was just better. If I were a betting man, I'd wager Arneal's words in the first intermission had something to do with this turnaround. And you'd have to think the old coach cracked the whip in a game like that. Something had to have been said quite well in the second intermission to see that game flip over
completely
to
different.
That level.
Yep.
Just impressive to watch down the stretch. Like, you got up 1 goal and then completely controlled the third period. Completely.
It's funny. We were wondering if we were going to see the line blender come out in the third period just to get, something going in their way. And instead they just did it on their own again.
It's impressive to watch, man. It really is. Especially, I think it's one thing to, I think it's a really impressive thing with how bad that game went off the rails to be able to find it when it mattered the most like that. Like, we didn't see that happen in Nashville, obviously, right? We were looking for a spark. It never came. No. For them to just take complete control of that one, get some big performances. Another thing we've talked about is how this team has been prone to having different guys step up. Alex Iafallo, I thought right from the first period, makes a big block shot. I want to say shift 2. I missed the first 5 minutes of this one. And then the very next shift, Billy gets it up. Kupari's using those wheels and's got the confidence. Gets in hard on the forecheck, throws a guy off the puck, finds Iafallo for the goal. He adds the power play tip. On the other goal, he's holding up two guys in the D zone. So Winnipeg gets an odd man rush. Alex Iafallo have a night, man.
I take back any negative thing I've ever said about Alex Iafallo. He deserves every penny of that. The ability to have a fourth line that can essentially function as most teams' third line is such an advantage in the Jets' pocket right now. And yeah, the fact that they get different guys every night, including that fourth line, Rasmus Kupari. I know our boy Zero Ghost 8 in the chat there is having himself a party. Because he's continuing to show that fourth line can be trusted in every situation, and Iafallo's got some riz right now.
I love how you used that pick for the show tonight. It was obviously a great pick.
Yeah, right after the goal.
A lot. Go for it.
No, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of love for Hellebuyck in the chat. Doug Henderson says Mini got goalied. Toronto Sports Network, Helly is a first star all day. Lucas Trapp, Helly for heart. Kevin Koala, give Helly the MVP Vezina. Now. Don't sweat it. Yep. We know what we have in Connor Hellebuyck, and this was one of those nights.
Unreal. I don't know how you can watch this team and not realize that Connor Hellebuyck is the best player for the Jets. Just overall, he is their superstar. He is their icon. He is their Hall of Famer. He's going to be, atop of all those records. We just need to make sure his name's on the Stanley Cup too.
Hey, one day. I'm hoping, man. This team's giving you the good vibes early. Sil says, hey, Nick, how good does it feel to be able to bury those Wild fans on Twitter? As someone that just enjoys that aspect of things, don't worry, I'll be having some fun over the next couple of days. Make sure you watch along because, we will not let those guys slip after that one.
Nope, got to make sure they know who Little Brother is. Both there's somebody on Twitch and on Twitter who pointed this out, or not Twitter, pardon me, on YouTube. And I'm just trying to find the YouTube person. I lost it. The Jets somehow came out with the adjusted 5-on-5 goals against, or expected goals against, which is real interesting when you watch the first half of that game, right? And I thought that's really interesting that, they somehow in the end came out with the better 5-on-5 play.
And it was one of those things because, like I was kind of talking about earlier, it felt like Mini was able to establish the zone very well. And then things come undone when those point shots start getting through and Helly lets up some rebounds. Now, Hellebuyck was all over tracking the rebounds that did come. It did not matter what he was letting out. But it seemed like the Winnipeg Jets, as soon as they were able to, again, gap up in the neutral zone, not allow such easy entries and not play as much defensively, they didn't really give up as much quality. I want to say, like, right around the time Nino scores, I feel like this game completely turns into Winnipeg's favor. Yep. In the third period, there was, one quality look, and it was off that shift I was talking about with the top line and Pionk, where it's a low to high play right into the slot, and Hellebuyck's just there. It was a phenomenal turnaround in this one.
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked a lot this year about the identity of this team and how they never really, feel out of it most nights, right? There's been a couple now. We've seen 2 or 3 where they were out of it, but in that early run, it felt real, real special. And this just kind of, I think, echoes that where, they started off real poorly. It felt like, is this going to be another Nashville game? Is this going to be another Florida game? And instead, they found whatever it was, an inspiring word from the coaching staff, an inspiring word from each other, or somebody just yelling at each other. Who knows? Whatever it was, they found a way to get back to the game that they needed to play to win, and then actually end up pulling it off. It was huge. It was huge.
It definitely was. And bouncing over to YouTube, Caleb says, I was surprised by the pairs. Didn't expect Fleury to pair with Pionk. Villy looked great. And yeah, like we kind of talked about, all 3 end up working out in this night. Turd Ferguson says, I thought Villy outplayed Fleury, albeit fewer minutes. I don't think I'd be afraid of putting him in that spot potentially. And I do think that's probably some type of convo we'll go along and have it at some point. Though, here's my theory for you, actually, because I do see a lot of Stanley better get used to the press box. Watching this one until Fleury put together a pretty good game. I kind of have a feeling they'll let Miller Heinola roll for a little bit, knowing that that was the pair they originally wanted to look at. And I would actually bet we see Fleury and Stanley roll between the Pionk side of things. What do you think of that?
Yep, I think that's probably the way that they're going to go. Even if Fleury strings together a few more good games, they're going to give Stanley another look as soon as he's healthy, I'm sure. So, and if Heinola and Miller play like this and improve as they're going, yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the route they'll take.
Phyllis says hey to Nick and Mikey over in YouTube, and Scott makes sure to yell Nick, in which I would, reply with the GIF if I had it. But Scott, good to see all you in the chat tonight. Don Dawson makes a great point too when it comes to Connor Hellebuyck. Never apologize when you have the best player in the league, and they certainly have the best goaltender in the league. So definitely not something to apologize, and he was big on this night. Doug Henderson points out these Jets are the 12th team in league history to start 18-4.
Yep. Connor Hellebuyck now ties the group of I think there's 3 or 4 other guys fastest to get to 15 wins in NHL history. It's pretty cool as well.
Holy shit. Yeah, they're just piling up all this historical early season data, and it's definitely been a lot of fun to be to be. I see after making that point on Stanley and Fleury, I see over on Twitch, Choices TK says Pionk and Stanley, what could go wrong? And Glizzy Water Soup says Nick's mental health, and it would certainly be a test for me if they do go that direction in some time. But I just had a gut feeling watching that.
Turd Ferguson is echoing that thought as well. Pionk Stanley will give me nightmares. Yeah, it's defensively that'll be a rough one. Although at that point, could you maybe call Stanley Pionk your third pair at 5-on-5? They may be getting you may end up having more minutes for Heinola Miller at that point. It'd be interesting to see.
Something to think about.
Glizzy Water
Zero, go for it.
I was going to say, Glizzy Water Soup says, so they're plenty deep enough on defense right now, but they still need that upgrade. Not another depth D-man, but a top 4 guy. How do you feel about that? Do you think the depth is good enough and we just need that one big ad now, or would you still like to see a little more depth?
Should we go down what was I saying? We were going to go down the hill the
nostalgia route? I mean, this might be the end.
Is this where we start talking some nostalgia? So on that take, I do agree with Glizzy Water Soup. It's safe to say this team, at both forward and D, have more than the necessary players of NHL quality. Like we've talked about, I believe they have 13 NHL forwards on this roster that are NHL players. And you can make a case, guys like Chibrikov and Lambert soon. Then on D, I think when you're looking at this, Heinola's an NHLer, Miller's an NHLer, Pionk's an NHLer, Sandberg's an NHLer, Morrissey, DeMello, NHLers. Fleury, Stanley kind of on that line, but if we're talking about adding another top 4 defenseman, all of a sudden you're looking at guys like Colin Miller or Ville Heinola being the 7 on this team, and I do think that is a great position as far as depth, but they still do need that impact defender up in the lineup, ideally beside probably Josh Morrissey.
Yep.
So I would agree with that take. What do you think there?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'd be more than comfortable with that 7, going into the playoffs as the guys. But yeah, Morrissey needs that partner. He needs somebody that's going to play 25 minutes with him in a playoff game that they're, needing to close out. So we don't have it yet, but I think they can find it. And who knows, maybe there's somebody on the market. Have you heard anything? Are there any rumors out there?
Yeah, I see Zappy MK is saying not to say it, but I saw the chatter all over social media tonight, so we do gotta at least talk about it. We gotta. It's a good content point. Obviously, it's a discussion around this team. Former Winnipeg Jet Jacob Trouba's time in New York seems to be coming to an end, and there was a lot of social media chatter discussing the idea of Jacob Trouba. Where does Mikey stand on old Trouba as a potential ad for the Winnipeg Jets?
Don't hate me, but I want to do it. I want to do it. If the chance is out there to go out now, acquisition cost is a big thing. That's going to be where, but like there's really, he's got one more year left on the deal after this year. So we'll only have to worry about the salary for this year and next year. I'm fine with it. I will happily put Trouba beside Josh Morrissey on that top pairing all day long. Break the old Trouba jerseys out, everybody. Let's get the Bash Brothers together. I think it's time. What do you think?
Zero
Am I crazy?
Ghost 8 says, "Can we bring back Tyler Myers too?"
No.
Now we're
Bad,
getting
Rick. Bad.
Now we're getting
No.
real interesting. And I see Big Papa and Sil want to talk about Josh Norris, whose name came up. Let me get through the Trouba ramble, and then we'll move over to some Josh Norris takes. It's funny. I don't want this to sound like a ringing endorsement, by the way. I'm just going to paint the sides of both reasons here. I think the obvious reason to say no is it's a big cap hit for a guy that has not played very good hockey over the last couple of years. That's first and foremost. There's a reason the New York Rangers are trying to trade their captain, despite being a team that's been all over the Eastern Conference Finals. Yep. He has not lived up to that deal. So let's just get that right out of the way. Right out of the way. If you want to paint the positive, and hey, Lucas Trapp says, hell no to Trouba. Doug Henderson says, Kreider, yes, Trouba, no. I'll paint the side of Trouba where you could talk yourself into it. Because of that high cost of his cap and the fact that he's been so bad, I imagine the New York Rangers are going to have to eat quite a bit of money in that deal to move him. So that would be an aspect. If you look at his play style, he does have some things in his game that the Jets maybe lack, like the physicality and being able to transfer the puck up the ice with his skating. And I think that's an area that the Winnipeg Jets would potentially benefit from. We know that this team's all about the vibes in the room and the personalities and whatnot. And you knew Jacob Trouba had the bromance with Mark Scheifele for years and years.
Yep.
So if that's an aspect, the only way I would ever even consider this, and it would have to be a very specific way, it would be New York's eating like $3 million, bringing him down to $5 million.
Yep.
The Winnipeg Jets are adding a contract back, like an Iafallo at $4 million, so they maintain that cap flexibility and don't pay much in asset costs. And the thought would be that you're potentially acquiring a top 4 right-handed D that brings that playoff type ability, that has a history with Josh Morrissey, that maybe you fix the D, and maybe with 7 guys of Morrissey, Pionk, Sandberg, Trouba, DeMello, Miller, Heinola, you're able to figure out 3 pairs that really propel you. You're probably looking at maybe a top pair and 2 second pairs. Not saying this is a perfect scenario, but all of a sudden, if you do work the money out and it's like you haven't given up assets, we were just talking about yesterday or earlier today on the Monday show how hard it's going to be to acquire a right-handed D and a center. In this way, if it worked out, all of a sudden you've fixed the one hole while still being able to allocate all your resources to a legitimate 2C. Again, not saying this is my ideal, but I'm just providing the reasoning why you might go down that path.
Yeah, if you can pay the Rangers in picks to take, like that's less than 50% retained, so you're not even asking them to do the full 50. Trouba makes less in real dollars next year than he does on the cap, which, again, we've talked about. That's something the Jets like. You can make those dollars work. You can find ways to make the money work. I think Trouba fits that spot real nicely. And, again, you're only on the hook for the remainder of this season and next year.
Yeah, not the perfect ad. I do want to aim higher, but I get the allure and the intrigue, especially with his play type.
It feels like an easy addition.
I didn't even give you the best reason why you could potentially do it. Because of that extra year, you're not going to walk yourself into the Pionk extension because you have DeMello signed, Miller signed, and Salmonson coming.
Oh, see now
you avoid a longer term landmine. I'm just we'll add that to it.
Absolutely sold.
It's an interesting one. It's definitely more nostalgia based than the level of play we've seen from Jacob Trouba. But though it is pretty interesting when you look at the type of player he is, the fit in the room and all that stuff. Yeah. Just an intriguing aspect. On Josh Norris though, I gotta say,
I want to hear your thoughts.
I'm out. I'm so far out on Josh Norris, I gotta say. I can't. You can't talk me into Josh Norris at this point. I think Josh Norris is a quality center.
Yeah.
Who's been really banged up and is not playing too great, and he's on the hook for $8 million a year. At $8 million a year, you're getting 50 games out of him every year. I get why we're talking about 2 seasons needing to up the skill there. I think that's just too big of a risk, both in the short term and the long term, given his history of some serious injuries, given what those injuries have led to on the ice for the Ottawa Senators, and the price tag. It's something I would want to completely avoid, though I get the allure of finding a skilled centerman.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not psyched about paying him $7.95 going forward for what you're going to get out of Josh Norris. But yeah, I do like that's the type of ad that we should be looking for, right? That big name. I don't think he's the right fit for the Jets.
Well, I'll say this. You know what's kind of interesting going around the NHL right now, with teams like the Rangers talking about shaking up their core, with teams like Edmonton's getting restless, Ottawa's getting restless, Vancouver's getting restless. You're starting to see some really interesting potential core players might be on the move to shake up some organizations. Like one guy I've always been kind of paying attention to about potentially becoming available as a defenseman, and he's off to a really good start, but his name always comes up around Ottawa, is Thomas Chabot.
You stole the words out of my mouth. I was just going to ask you about Chabot.
He's having a really good start. Talk about a guy that's a top flight level defenseman. Now a guy that has had his own injury concerns in the past, but hey, he's off to a great start. I just wonder if you see some of these teams continue to go down these paths where they're kind of stuck, if patience is going to pay off here and you're able to acquire a higher end player in season, because like we've talked about, Winnipeg Jets are in great shape when it comes to having available cap space.
Yep.
They have a ton of cap space moving forward into the future, so they could take on a longer term deal. This is the one aspect like that's really annoyed me when when you hear the public talk around the LTIR aspect and how everyone's kind of become convinced that going into LTIR is a cheat code and it's where the best teams build. Because when you're in LTIR, you don't get to bank cap space. You don't get to gear up for the deadline like the Winnipeg Jets have. And I believe Kevin Cheveldayoff and what he's done with this retool in Winnipeg is the glowing example of why you should want to avoid LTIR. Have the flexibility. We're talking about potentially having 10 to 12 million space at the deadline while having $5.5 million dead cap from buyouts. There is such a positive to staying under that line. And if some of these core players does move, it's the type of situation that I think Kevin Cheveldayoff should be prepared to jump in there.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this opportunity now, both in the short term and the long term, to really set how the look of the team is going to be. And he should be aggressive, Chevy. This is the time to do it.
It is, and we're seeing some interesting names thrown in the chat. Toronto Sports Network points out Toronto is reportedly looking at Nazem Kadri, which is an interesting name out there when looking at centers. Choices points out Chabot 8 mil times 3 more years behind this year with a 10-team no move. And the thing there, too, because of that deal you have Josh Morrissey on, if you go find one of these core-level defensemen like a Chabot, or I'll keep dreaming on Uyghur, of course.
That's the dream.
You're looking at having 2 defensemen that are top pair level at most 14.25 on the cap because of Josh Morrissey's contract. Like, they're in a real good spot to make that big swing with term. And those are harder contracts for teams to move. We know Chevy likes to find that good value deal. I wonder if he stumbles into one here.
Now's the time to do it, especially if the cap is going to be going up soon. We'll have even more room to build off of. You're allocating such a smaller percentage to those spots than other teams will allow you to overspend in other places, right? Bring in a higher impact player, and with a growing cap, it feels like this is the time to be aggressive with it. Be aggressive.
We'll see. It's one of those interesting storylines behind the league right now. Obviously, Boston went for the head coaching switch first. What happens if they continue to falter? Donnie Fester throws out a name that I've wondered about with Columbus continuing to spin their tires. Talk about going to get another Kyle Connor Michigan friend. Zach Werenski, could he potentially be available if that team decides to blow things up? I mean, we are on the verge of them trading David Juracek off their back end as well. Matejček continues to look really good for them as a prospect. I imagine we'll see him at some point up there.
Yep.
But that's the type of name to watch.
Yep.
Mark 404144 says Brandon Carlo. That's been a name that's been reportedly linked in years past to the Jets, though I, again, want to aim a bit higher. The one thing I'll say, watching this game and kind of coming to that conclusion that it's not just a theory we have. I think it's fairly obvious the pre-scout in Winnipeg is those point shots and just creating havoc in the slot. I think that starts to track with why the Winnipeg Jets are looking for a bigger defenseman. You're going to look to clog up that area that seems to be your weak spot. What do you think of that?
I've always said that size should never be just your determining factor, both in like positives or negatives, right? When we talk about it, the guy's got to play. But I agree that they need to have somebody in that space who can get in there and start clearing out some of the opposing bodies, whether that's through pure size, strength, positioning, whatever it is. They need somebody with a track record of being able to start clearing that space out and giving Hellebuyck some more room to work. Because when they start getting too many guys up in his space and they start getting those rebounds popping out, that's where the Jets really struggle. So I do want to see that as a priority. Just no Tyler Myers or Logan Stanley's.
I was surprised to see some Tyler Myers hype in the chat. And it's one of those things. Like, I think the two key things, if you're looking for a defenseman in Winnipeg, they have to be able to move the puck up. We've talked about it. Transitioning has to be the importance. But I think that the net front slot area and what we're starting to see develop against this team has to be in that consideration as well when we start looking at some guys.
I mean, Trouba does both those things. Just saying.
We're also seeing some Adam Larson and pairing him with Morrissey in the chat from Sill and Glizzy Water Soup. Though, if I'm not mistaken, Seattle just extended him, didn't they?
He's in the final year right now. Did they sign a new one? 25. They just extended him. Yeah,
so hard to see a team that just gave out an extension moving on a player, because I know Doug Henderson had DM'd me too asking about a Mikhail Sergachev out of Utah. Yeah. That's a guy that they just gave up some assets for this summer. It's hard to see a team make that quick of a decision on somebody. Yeah. Toronto Sports Network asks on this topic, so wait, what position do you truly think needs to be done? Sandberg is wounded. He will be back. What do we really need to fill? I see, and then it says, what if Winnipeg just went for it? No changes. Sandberg back in a few weeks. I think Winnipeg can, and I think they probably will try and get through this stretch without making a big swing. Yep. But when we're looking at April through June, I believe it's the same thing as before the season. This team will need an upgrade at 2C. And I would be looking at a top-level right-handed D that bumps everybody down a peg, so that you're looking at a D core of Morrissey, Sandberg, Heinola, and I guess Stanley on the left side. And then you're looking on the right side, a trade acquisition, Pionk, DeMello, and Miller. And then that's a 7-8 if you think Stanley's going to impact the playoffs. Group of 7 to 8 that you could be pretty confident in. Yeah. Even if somebody goes down, you're bringing in a quality option, as well as bumping a guy like DeMello, who continues to struggle, into a softer minute spot. I think those are the two areas. If you want to take this from a team that I think is going to be a tough out to a team that could put a banner up in Canada Life Center, I think it has to be those two spots.
Yeah, 100%. At the moment, like we talked earlier, the depth is good. They've got enough bodies to fill out that space where you're more than comfortable if somebody has to fill in. But they don't have that second horse to run with Morrissey in a late playoff game when it's, not going your way and you're trying to close it out. They just don't have that second guy to go with Morrissey right now. So I think they need that impact right D still.
And the fact that they continue to do this 18-4-0 before making upgrades like that, I think you're looking at a team that becomes a very, very, very tough out, if not the favorite in the West, if you were to upgrade those two spots.
Yep, absolutely. Once we've had the start that we've gone on here, the focus has really shifted from just happy to be there to they can go deep. And with the right acquisition, this team could be, like you said, hanging a banner up for everybody to see.
Back to the game a little bit, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit more trade. One aspect I come out of this is I still really need to see the blender go to those two skill groups. Not really liking where those games are trending. Now, part of it, I think it's pretty obvious now at this point. This was another tough Mark Scheifele out. There's no way this guy's healthy. And I think at this point, just based on what we've seen the last two games that I think are among his lowest of his career, let's say. Now he's dealing with an injury and it's so clear, so it's not like you want to put that on the guy's head. Yep. But the player is actively hurting you trying to play through this at this point. And do we see him take a bit of a break here? Because today it was another tough watch, like to a level that you just can't have out of your number one center. And we know it's because of an injury. At some point, someone's got to give him a tap and say, hey, let's just get this back to full health.
Yeah, that's on the coaching staff and the medical staff at that point. We've seen it with professional athletes since the beginning of professional sports. Most of the time, they're not going to be the ones to pull themselves out of a game or a practice or to come and say, oh, I can't play, right? These are highly, highly motivated, aggressive, they want to play. They want to be out there. So you can clearly tell he's hurt. I don't know if they're trying to get him to the home stretch that we have coming up beginning of December to try to give him time then to bring up some, moose players to see, what they can do with the lineup. I'm not really sure, but it's clear he's hurt. It's clear there's something going on there. And I don't know how it benefits him or the team to keep tossing him out there. And that whole line is not producing really because of it.
Yeah, I actually liked Kyle Connor's game in this one, but it's hard to go when you don't really have a center going, right? And I'm of the belief, obviously, a player is going to try and play hurt, but especially when Team Canada is on the line. But you can make the case, as we get closer to those rosters being handled, that the question might arise, hey, he's kind of whimpered into this portion of it, and it's because of an injury, and does that negatively impact that chance at this point?
Yeah, I think it does, because the play is going to drop. The points are going to stop, right? I don't know how it helps. Pardon me. So, yeah, he needs time to sit. He needs to rest and heal because there's, something off.
Yeah, we shall see, but it was just another frustrating one in that regard. But, hey, get through it. Get some big performances. You get to watch the best goal in the world. I look at those two skill groups, and when the game gets tough, it's been tough for both of them. And this was another game, the Adam Lowry line was the best line for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yep. And we were lucky that the fourth line was there to help round it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. I was an athlete too, and you could never pull me out unless it got that bad. But when it's actively hurting the team at this point, someone's got to just pull them aside and say, "Hey, take a week," because it's that bad the last two games.
So say they finally look at it tonight and go, you know what, that's it. You can't. This is clearly it's too swollen, it's too hurt, it's too strained, whatever. What do you do with the lineup?
I imagine they would probably, if it was just a 2-game kind of thing, I imagine they'd go to Gus just because he's sitting there ready to play center. Yeah. Maybe they bump up. I mean, we saw Kupari play a shift with that group. We also saw Kupari get bounced up to play a shift with Ehlers and Perfetti when it looked like Vlad got hurt early in that one with a slash. So I imagine Kupari would jump up into one of those lines and Gus would then become the fourth line center. Now, obviously, you look at the centers without Mark Scheifele, and it's clearly a big problem, and that's another reason why a 2C or a 1C type is such a big need going into the playoffs. Yeah. But it's one of those things you're going to need Mark Scheifele to be a big part of this as this season goes on, and you just don't want him dealing with a bad hand wrist that gets worse and worse as this season goes on, when clearly right now it's already impacting the level of play for a guy that is at his best when he's holding onto the puck and able to feel it and whatnot. We're seeing a guy dump and chase softly, not really want to engage in battles, and it's clear why. Like he's protecting something, and you got to do what you got to do. But at some point, I just think you need to really protect Mark Scheifele from Mark Scheifele.
Yep, I completely agree. At a certain point, you have to protect the athlete from themselves, and I think we're kind of at that spot. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't think Olli Jokinen is still out there, so we're gonna have to find somebody before the playoffs to fill that 2C spot.
So a couple takes here on that conversation. Caleb says Lowry would likely take 1C and Gus draws in, and that's an area too, right? That would be the guy to promote. I wonder if they would keep that line together and just play them more. But Lowry would be the guy to kind of promote, especially with the year he's having. Julian kind of nails on where my head would obviously go, though I don't think they would do it on the road. And this, I think, plays into what you were talking about with potentially doing at home, where if 55 can't go, why not experiment with the cushion you got? IR 55 if he's that hampered, and run 13 in Lambeau at C. See what you got. Worst case scenario, there's not an immediate 2C in the org. And that type of logic tracks with me really well.
Yep. He's it'll be interesting to see if it's just a couple games or if it ends up being a longer term thing, how that impacts the decisions. Or if they do anything at all. I'm real. Yeah.
Zuch has a different theory here, though. Mentions my mic is cracking. My bad. Are you hearing that, Mikey? That they think it's Scheifele's back, much like Perreault. It's the bending he's avoiding.
Interesting. I'll have to go back and take a look at some of the clips to take a peek at that. That's a good catch, Zuch.
That's a different theory, because I've been thinking hand wrist for sure, especially with the face-offs. So I guess you'd bend over with those as well. No, I'm gonna have to start watching that a little differently. That's an interesting theory.
Yep.
Okay, I am crackling. We'll try and get that fixed up, though. We don't got much longer. We'll get it fixed for next show. Doug Henderson says our second line is de facto in ice time. Our third currently, we need an actual second line. And for me, this conversation ties together, because you need both a better first line and a better second line if we're talking about a Stanley Cup. And you might have those answers between those two lines by trying something new down this stretch before Christmas to really get a handle on things. The first line, again, struggles, especially in the D zone. The Ehlers, Perfetti, Nemeskov lines, real tough to watch on nights like this for me.
Yep.
And it could be as simple as fooling around with what you have now to be able to answer what you actually need in that top six come the deadline, whether it be a certain style of center to pair with somebody that's not Nick Ehlers and Cole Perfetti, who I don't think are a mix for each other. At some point, I know you're 18-4-0, but it's looked a lot tougher. It's gotten a lot tougher. You're going to have to get a different look in that top six to start generating a 5-on-5 at some point here.
Yep, 100% agreed. 100% agreed.
So that's where I'm at. As much as it's easy to point to the second line, when you do have a below average NHL first line, it is a real issue for both groups in the bigger picture. And this isn't to say I see Toronto Sports Network saying I'm not out on 7. He plays with 100% every game. Vlad Nemestikov is one of my favorite players on the Winnipeg Jets because of that work ethic, that effort. He's always involved. He's just not a skilled player to be playing with skilled players. The offense, we saw one look today where Perfetti sends it over to him, and he's got a lane to the net, and he ends up mishandling it. It goes to the corner, creates a battle. Things like that are going to matter. And all of a sudden, when we're talking about upgrading that center spot, again, Vlad Nemestikov ends up becoming a feature on that fourth line that gives that group another boost despite how good they are. It's never a bad thing to get better at every level of your lineup as the season goes on.
Yep, I totally agree. And not to extend the convo too much, but just curious, do you think the success of the Lowry line to start the year has maybe hampered the ability for Scott Arniel to move Lowry up to play on that quote unquote second line with the other skilled guys?
Yeah, because we saw it when he went to the blender a couple times, and I still do wonder when this team hits like a real skid. And I mean, you kind of can make the case that they're almost there. I mean, we've talked about how Connor Hellebuyck really stole this game, and it would have been their fourth loss in 6 when you're just looking at it. Now they escape at 500, and you're probably happy with 3-3 in such a stretch.
Yep.
But it is kind of the time where you're seeing it get tougher for this group that, hey, it wouldn't hurt to kind of give a little boost by trying something new.
Would you like to see Lowry up with Ehlers and Perfetti if Arniel's intent on keeping those wingers together with like Scheifele and Connor, I mean?
I don't think it changes all that much for me, honestly.
Yeah.
If you're not going to change the top line, there's just no point in
No
changing
point.
the second line at this point. You're going to run an inefficient group.
Okay.
It's got to be both. It really has to be both. And I think Vlad is a good fit with Appleton and Nino if you were to go that direction, but
Yeah.
I just don't see it that
Making enough of a
changing whole
difference.
lot. Enough of a, especially when you're getting such a good push from the Lowry line already. It almost seems like you're taking the one spot where you're generally sound, generally have an identity to try
Yeah.
and fix another group, and you might end up with 3 problems instead of 2.
Yeah.
It has to come from those 2 skill groups, and it's going to take some time, I guess, because of the wins. But at some point, you got to look at the bigger picture here. Zero Ghost throws out the idea of Connor, Gabe, Ehlers. I just don't want to put Gabe at center.
Yeah.
He's finally found some success in his career, obviously a rocky road. I'm not sure the pacing will be there. Obviously great in the draws and great to have that option. But it almost feels like stealing from Peter to pay Paul, and I think it has more risk than potential success is where I'm at there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not doing the Blake Wheeler at center game again. We've tried it. It's not fun. I'd rather have Gabe Velarde as a, taking faceoffs on that line and just having 2 really good faceoff guys. But I'll try anything. Honestly, I may try anything to get this top line not together at some point.
And then the Messikov line, I just can't see. I get the results are there right now, but if you just look at this and how much of a roller coaster and what the downs look like, I don't think this is it.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, Leslie's fired up about something. Hey,
He's into it.
with that in mind, I gotta deal with the dog here. We're almost at the hour mark. You want to jump into some 3 stars?
Heck yeah, let's hit it.
Okay, who do you got tonight?
All right, 3rd star, I'm giving it to the 3rd pairing, Heinola, Miller. Great job by that pairing just in general. They were effective, they were steady, no big mistakes. Heinola's first game in 2 years. I thought they did great. So yeah, third star to that line or to that pairing. 2nd star, Alex Iafallo. He was all over the game tonight. He was in on 3 of the goals. Absolute wonderful to have the 4th line chipping in and scoring when the skill lines aren't going. And number 1 star, how could it not? I know it's all the time, but how do you not pick Connor Hellebuyck after that one? Again, keeping the Jets alive through the first half of that game. It should have been 4-1 after the first period. I think somebody pulled up the expected goals after 1, and it was like 4.4 for Minnesota. So, it was ridiculous. Number 1 star, Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah, I'm going to go number 3. Ville Heinola, welcome to the big leagues, kid. I hope you could keep building off of this. It was great to see him take such a great first step, and we're going to reward him with the 3rd star in this one. Number 2, Alex Iafallo. 2 goals, a lot of the gritty work, couple block shots, gets in there on the forecheck, plays a simple game, and gets rewarded on the score sheet tonight. And then, of course, the god himself, the Vezina winner, maybe a Hart finalist type guy. We'll start have to building that narrative.
It's coming.
Connor Hellebuyck is the best player in this one, and he's going to get the 1st star. As usual, want to thank the chat for tuning in tonight and being a part of this, really helping guide where you want the conversations to go. Having a lot of fun with this. We'll be back later this week as the Jets look to go 19-4-0, which just is it's crazy that we're still talking about it at that level.
Unheard of. Make sure you guys are out there following us on Twitter, on Blue Sky. We're out on Blue Sky now. And you're liking, following, subscribing, all that cool stuff. It means a lot. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.